The king fell alone in the bathroom of his own mansion. At 42 years old, he slept forever. But was it just a common heart attack? Or the end of a man with a broken heart, tired of fame, of medication, and of pain no one could see? Today, we're going to dive into his final hours, the pills, the fears, and the official version, and ask, who really killed Elvis? The supposed answer hits like an emotional punch, a mix of sadness, mystery, and a question that stirs the hearts of fans. It prepares the viewer for a journey between myth, truth, and tragedy. The sound of a guitar echoes in Memphis and changes history. His name was Elvis Aaron Presley, a shy boy with a powerful voice and a restless soul who grew up between church hymns and the warm sound of Southern blues. When he opened his mouth at Sun Record Studio in 1954, no one imagined that this 19-year-old was inaugurating a new era. Rock and roll was born there, in the midst of sweat, improvisation, and an energy the world had never felt before. That's All Right, the first recording, wasn't just a song, it was a cry of freedom, an announcement that the boy from Mississippi had arrived to challenge everything considered normal. Success came like a storm. In a few months, Elvis was the name everyone wanted to hear. The hair, the moves, the voice full of emotion. Everything about him was different. He didn't just sing, he lived each verse as if it were his last. By 1956, he was already a global phenomenon. Television showed a young man in a leather jacket, sensual and rebellious, who shocked parents and made crowds of girls faint. Rock had a face, had attitude, and had a king. And that title, which began as a nickname, became a prophecy. But glory comes at a price. The young man who only wanted to sing began to live inside a golden cage. Fame was a spectacle, but also a prison. Elvis worked non-stop. Shows, movies, tours, contracts, interviews. Every minute of his life was measured, every gesture analyzed. He had become a product, and the entire world wanted a piece of him. The free boy from the South no longer existed. In his place was a man who had to smile even when his heart was heavy. In the 1960s, pressure began to turn into exhaustion. Elvis filmed one movie after another, often without believing in the script himself. The productions were profitable but shallow, and audiences began to miss the real artist. He felt it too. In silence, he questioned whether he still had something to say. This restlessness culminated in the legendary 1968 comeback special, a television show that marked his rebirth. Dressed in black leather, sitting on a small stage, Elvis sang with the fury and tenderness of a man fighting against his own erasure. It was a magical moment. The king was back. But behind that triumphant return were invisible wounds. His marriage to Priscilla was deteriorating. His personal life was falling apart while his commitments increased. The Las Vegas shows brought applause and money, but the pace was devastating. Elvis slept little, ate poorly, and relied more and more on medications to keep his body and mind going. Doctors and assistants tried to keep him standing with prescriptions, pills, and promises of rest that never came. His health fluctuated between highs and lows, and the smile before the cameras hid an exhausted man. At this point, the phrase by Sam Phillips, the producer who discovered him, takes on an almost prophetic weight. Elvis died of a broken heart. It's not a medical diagnosis, but an emotional truth. The man who sang about love, who brought joy to millions, could no longer find peace within his own heart. He had everything the world could offer: fame, money, cars, mansions, but he lacked the essential: meaning. The flame that once made him wake up, sing, and dream was slowly going out. And you, what do you think? Did Elvis really die of a broken heart, or was he a victim of his own fame? Leave your opinion in the comments. I want to know what the hearts of true fans feel about this. Elvis's solitude was silent, but it screamed between the lines of his songs.
When he sang, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" it wasn't just performance, it was confession. He saw himself trapped in a routine that fed the myth but emptied the man. Each round of applause reminded him how loved he was, and, paradoxically, how alone he felt. That spontaneous boy from Memphis, who once believed he could change the world with a microphone, now felt suffocated by the empire he had built himself. Behind the scenes, those who lived with him noticed the changes. The sparkle in his eyes was rarer, his body more swollen, his voice raspier. Elvis tried hard to look the same, but time and pain no longer allowed it. Still, he went on stage as if singing were his last way to resist. It was there, under the lights, that his heart still beat strong. The public saw a god, he saw a man, trying to survive his own myth.
The first act of this story ends like this: an idol in conflict, an artist between applause and silence. Elvis Presley had achieved everything he ever dreamed of, and, at the same time, lost the lightness that made him begin. What came next would be the conclusion of a life too intense to fit in one body. But before the end, there was still a man, and that man, despite all the excesses and pain, still believed he could once again feel the love that once inspired him. Elvis's body began to charge the price of a life lived in excess. In the early 1970s, he was still the most famous man in the world, but no longer had the vitality of the boy who once set stages on fire. His face was puffy, his energy unstable, and performances became a struggle. Still, he went on. He was a prisoner of his own success, aware that the audience would not let him stop. Each show in Las Vegas, each tour, was a fight between the artist who still loved to sing and the exhausted man trying to survive. Doctors around Elvis began to notice that his body could no longer keep up. He suffered from hypertension, chronic intestinal problems, glaucoma, and an overworked heart. The weight of touring and fame was compounded by poor eating habits and sleepless nights. To deal with pain, fatigue, and anxiety, Elvis surrounded himself with prescribed medications, sedatives to sleep, stimulants to wake up, painkillers to bear the pain. It was what specialists would later call polypharmacy, the simultaneous use of several medications that, together, created a dangerous combination, even if legally prescribed. Elvis's inner circle tried to protect him, but also unintentionally fed the dependency. Doctors and assistants, driven by loyalty and fear of confronting him, gave in to every request. The result was an endless cycle. When the body asked for rest, came the pills. When the effect wore off, more pills. It was a survival mechanism for a man living under the spotlight, surrounded by applause but drowning in loneliness. The public saw the shine, those closest saw the fragility. His health problems showed on stage. During some shows, Elvis forgot lyrics, sweated excessively, and leaned on musicians to keep from falling. Fans, blinded by devotion, pretended not to see. Others cried when they realized their idol was fading before their eyes. That man dressed in white, surrounded by orchestras and lights, was no longer the same who had set the 1968 comeback special ablaze. His eyes carried a fatigue that couldn't be hidden, and his voice, though still strong, sounded like an echo of what it once was. Do you believe Elvis was a victim of fame's pressure and the demands of an audience that wouldn't let him rest? Or did he lose himself trying to sustain the myth he created? Leave your thoughts in the comments. This discussion still divides even his biggest fans. Even in decline, Elvis didn't stop. The schedule stayed full. The public demanded, the press pressured, and the machine of success allowed no breaks. He knew he needed to sing, but deep down, maybe he sang just to keep existing. There was something tragic about it. The man who turned rock into religion had become a servant of his own creation. Each song was an offering to an audience that adored him, but whose devotion also consumed him. His health problems showed on stage. During some shows, Elvis forgot lyrics, sweated excessively, and leaned on musicians to keep from falling. Fans, blinded by devotion, pretended not to see. Others cried when they realized their idol was fading before their eyes. That man dressed in white, surrounded by orchestras and lights, was no longer the same who had set the 1968 comeback special ablaze. His eyes carried a fatigue that couldn't be hidden, and his voice, though still strong, sounded like an echo of what it once was. Do you believe Elvis was a victim of fame's pressure and the demands of an audience that wouldn't let him rest? Or did he lose himself trying to sustain the myth he created? Leave your thoughts in the comments. This discussion still divides even his biggest fans. Even in decline, Elvis didn't stop. The schedule stayed full. The public demanded, the press pressured, and the machine of success allowed no breaks. He knew he needed to sing, but deep down, maybe he sang just to keep existing. There was something tragic about it. The man who turned rock into religion had become a servant of his own creation. Each song was an offering to an audience that adored him, but whose devotion also consumed him. In the end, what we saw was a man who had everything, but carried the weight of losing himself. His heart, already weakened by illness and medication, symbolized the emotional exhaustion of a life lived on the edge. Sam Phillips might have been right when he said Elvis died of a broken heart. The body gave out, but what truly ended him was the mixture of loneliness, exhaustion, and the pain of someone who could no longer be his own myth. The second act of the story ended with a tired king trying to sing above the sound of his own fall. It was a hot August morning in 1977 in Memphis. Graceland was quiet, the sun already high, and Elvis Presley was preparing for another ordinary day of rehearsal. He had a new tour scheduled, with dates in several cities, and his enthusiasm was discreet but real. The singer had spent the previous nights trying to adjust the set list between pauses and medication, alternating moments of energy with long stretches of fatigue. Around him, the routine remained the same: assistants, staff, phone calls, requests. No one imagined it would be the king's last sunrise. Around lunchtime, the silence was broken. Elvis was found unconscious in one of the mansion's bathrooms, collapsed on the floor. Panic spread through the house. Ambulances were called, and the medical team tried to revive him for long minutes. But Elvis's heart, which had endured years of strain, finally stopped. At 3:30 p.m. at Baptist Memorial Hospital, the news was made official. Elvis Aaron Presley was dead. The headline crossed the country in a matter of hours. The most famous man in the world was gone, and the planet was in shock. The first reports said he had suffered a cardiac arrest. It was the most direct explanation, the easiest to accept for an idol who seemed untouchable. But soon questions arose. Doctors, fans, journalists, and the curious wanted to know more. What had really happened? How could someone just 42 years old, with access to the best doctors and resources, die so suddenly? Details began to emerge little by little, along with the mystery that still surrounds Elvis Presley's death to this day. The autopsy was performed that same day, and initial results indicated cardiac arrhythmia, possibly caused by a chronic heart condition. However, toxicology tests revealed something alarming. There was a large quantity of medication in his system. These were prescribed drugs, many of them common for treating pain, insomnia, and anxiety. But combined, they represented a dangerous overload. Even so, the official report maintained the cardiac cause, avoiding terms that could link his death directly to substance abuse. The family requested confidentiality, and part of the documents was sealed for decades. This fueled curiosity and created the perfect ground for myths to grow. Over time, the public began to form its own narrative. Some said Elvis had been a victim of his own body, weakened by years of medication. Others believed he had simply given up fighting. Escape theories arose, rumors that the singer had faked his own death, stories of sightings in airports and restaurants. The denial was understandable. The world wasn't ready to say goodbye to Elvis. He was more than a singer. He was a symbol. And symbols, in the collective imagination, don't die. They disappear.
Meanwhile, Graceland became a sanctuary. Thousands of fans traveled to Memphis to say goodbye. Miles-long lines formed outside the gates, flowers piled up in colorful mounds, and the collective crying seemed endless. In that moment, it became clear that Elvis wasn't just an American idol, he was a universal phenomenon, a man who had touched people of all ages, classes, and cultures. His death united the world in mourning.
In the following months, magazines, newspapers, and television shows dedicated themselves to investigating the last days of his life. It was discovered that Elvis had been suffering from intense pain, sleepless nights, and a growing dependence on medication. Yet, at the same time, close friends said he was hopeful about the future, planning new shows and even a return to the big screen. It was a mix of fragility and strength, of decline and the desire to start over. This duality made his departure even more tragic. He seemed on the verge of a rebirth that never came. As years passed, accounts of Elvis's final moments were re-examined. Some professionals involved in the autopsy admitted that the combination of medications likely played an important role in his death, even if the term never appeared officially. Others emphasized that his heart condition was serious and unavoidable. The truth is, both things coexisted: a weakened body and an exhausted heart, physically and emotionally. Perhaps the broken heart Sam Phillips spoke of wasn't just a metaphor. But above all speculation, the legacy remained. Elvis's funeral was one of the largest in music history. It is estimated that more than 80,000 people passed through Graceland that week. The procession to Forest Hill Cemetery was followed by crowds, and Elvis's name echoed like a prayer. He became immortal not just for his voice, but for the humanity he conveyed in every song. Even in his darkest moments, he sang about love, faith, and hope. That sincerity made him unique. He didn't just perform songs, he lived them. Decades later, the mystery surrounding Elvis's death still fuels debate. But perhaps the answer lies in his own story. He was a man who gave everything to his art, who lived intensely, loved deeply, and felt too much. The body gave in, but the myth grew. And in the end, it might be fair to say that Elvis didn't die of a single cause. He died from being Elvis Presley, the man who lived too fast, dreamed too big, and left the world too soon. A human heart trying to bear the weight of a king. And that's it, my friend. The king may have left the stage, but his voice and soul remain alive in every note, every memory, and every fan who still feels moved when hearing Elvis Presley sing. If this story touched you in any way, if you also feel that Elvis's legacy deserves to be remembered with respect and love, then don't let this video go by. Subscribe to the channel right now. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Leave your like to support this community of fans who keep the King spirit alive to this day. And share this video with everyone who loves Elvis as much as you do. And of course, I want to hear from you too. Comment below which Elvis song or moment marked your life the most. Let's keep alive the flame of this man who changed music history forever. See you in the next video, and never forget, Elvis didn't die. He lives on in every heart that still believes in the power of music.